Jaire Alexander has been a big topic of conversation ever since his release from the Green Bay Packers. And after day one of minicamp for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson sent a clear message to Eric DeCosta on the matter. We talk about that, a recap of day one of minicamp, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Wednesday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. So every Monday through Friday, we have you covered with that daily Ravens coverage. Plus, we sometimes have bonus episodes over the weekend when the headlines permit. We also go live after every Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news also. And we're adding on some new things to the show this season, which I'm really excited about. So thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Day one of minicamp is in the books, and we're going to get into a lot of takeaways from day one, the defense, the offense, who performed, who did not. We'll get to that. In the final part of the show, we'll do some general takeaways, and in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the defense dominating day one of minicamp. But in the first part of the show, the big storyline of the day is Lamar Jackson's comments about Jaire Alexander, the former Packers cornerback who was released a couple of weeks ago. He's been making headlines. A lot of teams reportedly interested. And Lamar Jackson, he sent a clear message about his thoughts on whether the Ravens should sign him or not. So we'll get into that here as the show starts up. And look, I think it's an important conversation because I don't think there's a non-zero chance that Baltimore signs him. I think that there is a possibility. And Lamar Jackson, after day one of minicamp, he was asked about Jaire Alexander, and his message was very clear, very simple. He took a very firm stance on the matter. He said, quote, "Go get him, Eric. I love all our corners. Don't get me wrong, but go get him, Eric. Yes, I hit him up, but you don't know. You never know with Jaire. That's my boy." This is as glowing of an endorsement as you can give. And like Lamar said, it's not about the Ravens cornerbacks on the roster. In fact, you look at a cornerback room of potentially Marlon, Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Jaire Alexander alongside the other depth that they have there. That is a three-headed monster for the ages. There's a lot of versatility that can be utilized there. Maybe you move Marlon into the slot a little bit more. You can rotate guys in if you need to. I think Jaire would be a slam dunk for the Ravens. Now, there are a couple of different things that you do have to factor in. And again, I think it was really cool that, Lamar took this stance on Jaire. These two go way back. They were college teammates at Louisville. There's the viral clip of when Lamar gets drafted by the Ravens. Jaire's doing a draft interview after getting drafted by the Packers. They were in the same draft class. And Jaire goes, "Lamar, more," celebrating for Lamar. Like in the middle of his interview, he hears Lamar's name get called. These two are really close. And as Lamar said there, that's his guy. That's his guy. And there isn't necessarily like a pressing need for the Ravens at cornerback here. I know that if you had to pick a position that the Ravens feel like they could potentially need, it feels like safety with Darius Washington going down and a couple of, injury scares, although they weren't really scares. A little preview of the second part of the show is both Chidobe Awuzie and Bo Braid returned to practice on Tuesday. So that was a great thing. They're good to go now. But, in your secondary, I think it does make sense to add somebody, and you can never have enough corners. That's, a lot of people, Ozzie Newsome's phrase right there. Jaire would be awesome, but the money is a thing. The reason why Jaire is not on Green Bay anymore is because he got injured too often and they didn't want to pay him for being injured. He played in just 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons. And when on the field, when playing, he is incredible. Top 10 cornerback in the league still, in my opinion. I know the public opinion of him maybe has gone down a little bit because of the injuries. And I get it. The best ability you can have is availability. But Jaire still would be an upgrade over just about anybody on that roster at the cornerback position. And that, I think Marlon is a conversation you can have, and that's a whole different conversation. I know there are people on both sides of that. Nick Wiggins has certainly improved himself as well to already be regarded as one of the better corners in this league. But Jaire is super, super talented. Now, Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap, who we've had on the show, he breaks down everything relating to the salary cap with the Ravens. He put this back out on June 9th when the conversation, this is when around Jaire got cut and the whole situation. Brian said that the Ravens currently have $18 million in cap space, but after taking their future expenses into account, they have around $5 million in effective or usable cap space for signings. And Brian also mentions they do have the extension restructure route that will create additional cap space if used. And he also talked about, Rashod Bateman's deal creating maybe around $1 million in additional cap space, and that is factored into that conversation as well. So, look, if it turns into a bidding war for Jaire Alexander, if he truly wants to sign a big one-year deal somewhere and then try to parlay that into a big one more huge payday 4 or 5 year contract right in his prime, the Ravens probably won't be involved in that. $5 million for 1 year, unless Jaire truly does, if he's prioritizing Super Bowl, wants to take a massive pay cut, then I could see it happening. But, you had Peter Schrager of ESPN. He went on with Pat McAfee and essentially said at the end of the day, Jaire didn't want to take a pay cut. Now, the difference is now he's in a situation where he's obviously going to have to take one. And I kind of relate a little bit back to the Chidobe Awuzie situation with Baltimore, right? He gets cut by Tennessee. Tennessee is still paying him money. So what does he do? He signs a 1-year contract with a contender. He knows that the Ravens can win a Super Bowl, and he is hoping to parlay that into probably a bigger multi-year offer next season, because the Ravens do have an ability. It's honestly an uncanny ability to revitalize careers. We have seen it time and time again. We could go through a ton of examples. We'd be sitting here for like an hour on this show talking about it, of players who were considered washed, didn't have any good ball left in them. The Ravens signed those guys, and all of a sudden it extends their careers. And I'm not saying that Jaire needs a career extender or anything like that. I think he still has football left ahead of him, but it's a similar situation where he can take a 1-year deal at a reduced price. Green Bay and that whole situation is done. He gets his money, and he's still able to, if he has a great year, go out and get one more big contract. Because if he goes to a bad situation and doesn't play well, or the team doesn't play well, and he's affected by that, his play is affected by that, that could maybe mess with his money a little bit. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense with Baltimore, because, look, it's not like the Ravens need that corner one, as I talked about with Marlon and Nate there. You don't need it. Like, the Ravens will be just fine if they don't sign Jaire Alexander. But he truly feels like, and I talked about this on a show last week, if you want to go check that out, it feels like he is the final piece to the secondary, where I'd feel comfortable, even without a safety addition. If it's Jaire, man, I'd be on board with it. So, look, I get the injuries. I get people are shying away from him because of that. And if you are on that boat, if you're in the I don't want Jaire boat because of the injuries, I understand your thought process. I don't blame you. I do not blame you. But I think that it'll come down to price, right? If this is a bargain deal for Baltimore, it's a no-brainer to me. And the fact that he knows Lamar, he's a competitive guy, he has this endorsement, and Lamar is sending a message here. Remember, Lamar has sent messages before, right? And he has gone to the Ravens and said, hey, I'd like to play with Odell Beckham Jr. or DeAndre Hopkins. The Ravens go out that offseason. They get Odell Beckham Jr. to appease Lamar Jackson, and Lamar signs the extension. And then now DeAndre Hopkins is a member of the Ravens. So when Lamar speaks, this organization listens, right? Lamar has been called a shareholder by Eric Costa and company. The Ravens are very in tune with what Lamar wants, and Lamar is very in tune with what the Ravens want. It is a joint effort. So I do believe, some teams, some organizations, players will say this, and the teams will just be like, haha, funny. Like, yeah, cool. The Ravens, I think, truly value Lamar's opinion. They have made that very clear. So I don't know if that means it amounts to anything. If I had to guess, will Jaire be on the Ravens in 2025? My immediate answer would probably be no. But this is a clear message that Lamar sends here. It literally could not be any clearer. Like, it is absolute crystal clear. Lamar Jackson wants his team to sign one of his guys, one of his friends. And it's not just that. It's a good ball player, an elite ball player when he's on and when he's healthy. So price will play a factor, but, Lamar took his stance. Lamar took his stance. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll move into some minicamp talk. What happened on day one of minicamp on Tuesday? Stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go? I know I have. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is so easy to lose track. I've done it a ton of times, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. And you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. And when I started using Monarch, it made me realize just how much I was spending on things I had no idea I was spending that much on, but now I'm able to budget smarter and save more, and it is honestly a lifesaver. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. I love this. You can track your shared and personal accounts. You can set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this midweek edition of the show, talking Lamar Jackson and his stance on Jaire Alexander, but also, there was something else that happened yesterday, and that is day one of mandatory minicamp. It kicked off for the Ravens, and it's exciting, right? Again, I mention all the time on the show, you check off those boxes. We are one day closer, one event closer to the regular season, which is always fun. And there are a lot of things that happened yesterday at minicamp. Now, the big storyline of the day was that the defense dominated. The quarterbacks, for the most part, struggled. And that doesn't necessarily include Lamar Jackson for the most part. Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner reporting that Lamar had a pretty clean practice in his return. But underrated defensive player that did make a play on Lamar was Trenton Simpson, who picked off a short pass. And it looked to Jonas like Lamar might have been targeting DeAndre Hopkins. But it wasn't just that. Cooper Rush had a rough day. Devin Leary as well. I said it on the show earlier this week. I'm not very high on Cooper Rush right now, if we're being honest. And it's early, right? It's early, so I don't want to make any assumptions. We're mid-June here. But with the money they spent on Cooper Rush, hearing all these interceptions and tough days he's had, it's not been a great start, if we're being honest here, for Cooper Rush. And TJ Tampa was one of the players who intercepted Cooper Rush. He made a juggling interception in the end zone on Rush. And also Ruben Lowry, who's been making some plays. He took a ball away from Dayton Wade. There were interceptions galore at practice on Tuesday, which again, hey, it's great for the defense and the offense. Guys are getting into a groove. So I'm not going to sit here and overreact for a segment about, the offense is that. No, we're not going to do that. The offense, it will be just fine. And DeAndre Hopkins and Lamar Jackson were able to connect. This coming from BaltimoreRavens.com, Justin Robertson and Ryan Mink collabing on this one. DeAndre Hopkins had a one-handed sliding catch on a short pass from Lamar on 11-on-11s. And Lamar, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the final part of the show, he had very high praise for DeAndre Hopkins. Lamar Jackson also connected with his main man, Mark Andrews, for a big completion and 7-on-7s. This actually went over Trenton Simpson's head. So Lamar Jackson won, Trenton Simpson won during that battle. So Andrews picked up about 20 yards on that play. And Jay Kummel also almost had an interception during 7-on-7 work. So again, it's nice to see that. We saw a lot of times last year for the Ravens, especially early on in the season, and this was Roquan, and I do understand at the beginning of the year, Roquan was stretched pretty thin with all of his responsibilities, and part of that being that, guys like Trenton Simpson were not stepping up. But Roquan, in that week one game against Kansas City, Malik Harrison, they were getting beat time after time after time in the slot. They have to be able to pick up guys, the inside linebackers in the slot this season. So that, to me, is a really, really big part of that. But he also had some big moments for Devin Leary as well. He had a nice throw to Tez Walker. He had about a 20 to 25-yard gain down the sideline there. So it looked like it was the defense's day. Adafe Owe had an athletic play on a fake rollout, and he closed in on juking Lamar Jackson. Lamar was juking all around apparently, and it would have been a sack. So apparently here, according to Ryan and Justin, Odafe still looks nimble despite adding those 20 pounds, which Odafe talked about during OTAs. Teddy Buchanan broke up a pass over the middle in 7-on-7 drills, which was nice. Nadia Metabike apparently flashed several times. Broderick Washington had a would-be sack. Again, there's no contact during any of this, so we're talking about would-be's. We're not trying to get Lamar Jackson or anybody injured here, right? That's don't want to do that in mid-June. Do not want to do that in mid-June. But I mentioned a little earlier in the show in the first segment, Bo Braden and Chidobe Awuzie both did return after suffering their minor ankle injuries, which, really good for them. I'm glad that it wasn't more serious and they were able to recover and be back on the field. So really happy about that. But yeah, the overall theme here was defense. Not like the offense didn't have their flashes, right? I mean, you still had the offense make plays, but to me, I think that the offense will win some days, the defense will win some days, and I'm glad the defense is getting theirs. And Nikhil Mehta over Us Street Report saying the defense largely won the day with that number of interceptions. And he called the contested catches by TJ Tampa and Ruben Lowry really tough. They were tough contested catches by TJ Tampa and Ruben Lowry, according to Nikhil there. But a big thing has been the special teams, and not just any special teams player, but Tyler Loop in particular. That kicker battle has really caught the center of a lot of attention, and rightfully so, right? You're replacing Justin Tucker, who had a decorated on-field career for Baltimore for the majority of it, right? Last year, yeah, we don't have to talk about last year. That wasn't great. But Tyler Loop comes in, the Ravens pick him in the draft, and he struggled during the last day of OTAs, and that struggle continued. It continued over the course of Minotaur Minicamp Day 1. According to multiple reports here, Tyler Loop went 2 of 4 during the team period. This particular report coming from Jess Rubick at The Athletic. Tyler Loop, 2 for 4 during the team period. He missed an extra point and a 42-yarder, but was good from 43 yards and 45 yards. Now, his competition, undrafted rookie John Hoyland, he went 4 for 4. And actually, for Tyler Loop, a couple of veterans, according to Jeff, ended up pulling him over and pulling him aside and offering him some words of encouragement. They approached him to offer those encouraging words. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Ricard, and even John Harbaugh pulled him aside to, talk to him a little bit. And actually, Bo Smolka and a couple of others reporting that Steve Bisciotti was out there at practice watching. And so maybe there was some added pressure from that. I'm not really sure, but, Bo mentioning the fact that Tyler Loop had another uneven day with Steve Bisciotti on hand, and he ended up, and this was a late game, no timeouts left drill to rush the field goal team onto the field. And, it's interesting because Loop is a rookie, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the Ravens are doomed. No, it's not going to work out. Of course, I'm not going to say that, right? Sure, it's not fun to hear those updates. It's not fun to worry right now about, is Tyler Loop going to pan out or not? It is still so early in this process, right? And we had Cordell Woodland on the show. In fact, I'll play the short right now from Cordell Woodland that we had. We had him on last week. He's been at these. He was at OTAs. He was at minicamp yesterday. And I'm going to play the clip from Cordell about Tyler Loop, what he's seen from him so far. And to me, I don't think we should panic. And Cordell does agree with that. So we'll play that clip here. You being out there at OTAs, you seeing him on the field, what have been your early impressions of Tyler Loop so far?
Yeah, I mean, he's been steady up until Wednesday. He hadn't missed a kick from what we saw. I think he, other than the viewpoint was a little weird at rookie minicamp, but it looked like he may have missed one in rookie minicamp. Other than that, he's been pretty good. So he seems consistent. He's steady with his process. His mechanics are good. That's one thing that even talking to a couple of the Raven scouts, they rave about his mechanics. And one thing it seems like Randy Brown loved is he's a guy that, considering his mechanics are so good, even if he does get into kind of a cold spot, they trust that he'll be able to kind of get out of that rut because his mechanics are so consistent. That's been the thing that I've seen from him for the most part. He seems like he's ready to go, and I've seen him make some 50-plus yarders, and It doesn't even look like he's going full power a lot of those times. So I think he'll be fine.
And I think the big thing here also is that these workouts, OTAs, mini camps, etc., this is the time where I feel like the Ravens staff is trying to work with him, tweak some stuff. And so some of this might be new for Tyler Loop, right? Where essentially I compare it to like spring training in baseball, where spring training or these workouts at the NFL level, preseason stuff, exhibition, it's the time you want to try to work out your things, try new things, tweak stuff. You don't want to do that in week 2 of the regular season. And so if you're working through your process, you're not changing anything during the offseason, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I want to try this. Or the coaching staff says, hey, I want to see if this will work. No, this is the time you do that. Plus with Loop, I'm sure that the Ravens special team staff, Randy Brown, etc., I'm sure they are in his ear saying, hey, what if you tried this? What if you tried that? Trying to hone in on his skills. So I still think Tyler Loop will be all right. Again, that doesn't make these updates any more fun to hear. They're not, and it's, sure, you can be a little concerned about it, right? I don't blame you for that. But I think if this continues to be a trend, right? If this continues in a training camp, I think a strong day today during minicamp will go a long way for Tyler Loop. And I hope that he does. And I hope we're on here tomorrow talking about him having a strong day. But look, this kicker, I'm not really, I know Cordell, even on the show last week, if you haven't checked it out, he didn't call it a competition. He said it's not, because I think that Hoyland's going to be the practice squad guy. I agree with what Cordell's saying there, but this battle is going to be at the forefront of, the Ravens, not just offseason. It's going to be a forefront of the season. Every mistake Tyler Loop makes will be magnified. It's the nature of the beast for him right now. So hopefully he'll be able to bounce back. But again, very action-packed day 1 of minicamp, day 2 today. So of course we'll be talking about that. But we're not done talking about day 1 yet. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into some more takeaways, talk about what T. Martin had to say, DeAndre Hopkins, as well as a little bit more about what Lamar had to say too. Stay tuned, plenty to come here on Locked On Ravens. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you. Wednesday edition of the show. We've had a great week so far. I'm looking forward to continuing that. Appreciate everybody for tuning in here again, making us your first listen of the day and just a part of your day in general. Be sure to tell a friend, tell a family member about the show as well if you haven't already. We're here for them just like we're here for you on Locked On Ravens. Maybe you have a friend or a family member who is a big Ravens fan or wants the Ravens perspective on something, or is looking for that daily Ravens coverage. We are there for them, just like we are here for you, talking about that Ravens coverage every single weekday, plus more that we have coming up. So, minicamp for Baltimore. Again, it's exciting. The Ravens had 3 people at the podium yesterday: T. Martin, DeAndre Hopkins, and of course, Lamar Jackson. We talked a little bit about Lamar in the first part of the show, taking that stance on Jaire Alexander. But the thing that really intrigued me, let's start with what T. Martin had to say here. The thing that T. Martin had, there were a few, but one of the things T. Martin had to say is he was asked about, with Lamar having one of his best seasons by a quarterback ever last season, what is there left for him to do to improve? And it's a valid question, honestly. This was a great question from Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner. And T. Martin ended up saying that the first thing that Lamar said was he was watching the games that we lost. T. Martin approached Lamar. They were having a conversation, and on the field they were talking about what Lamar was watching during the offseason, and Lamar said he was watching the games that they lost. And Lamar said, quote, I just want to know how we lost them and what we did and what we can do better. So Lamar is already in that mindset, which I think is awesome. And we know Lamar is a competitor. Lamar hates to lose. He wants to do anything he can to get the job done and to win. And T. Martin mentioned that him individually, they had great discussions about that and, the things they want to do better last season, the things he wants to do better than last season. But it's not just Lamar Jackson's mindset rubbing off on the team. I mean, I guess in a way it is. I think the team is motivated by that stuff. But this team is full of competitors like this who want to do everything that they can to win. So I'm really excited about Lamar and his work and his ability to go out there and hopefully improve on, again, what was a historic season that unfortunately got swept under the rug for many different reasons. And T. Martin also called the Buffalo game a deep felt loss. And T. Martin said the last 2 seasons have kind of ended that way with some really emotional losses. And so Lamar, what he's thinking, what he's verbalizing and talking about, it's a little different. T. Martin said that you can see the maturity there in terms of what he sees on the field, things he wants to do offensively. He's having more input to the coaches, and talking about stuff like, oh, I see this. I want to do more here, less here. Like, he's doing a lot more of that, T. Martin said, and taking that communication to the next level, which has been great. He also talked about what we talked about earlier this week on Monday about Zay Flowers saying that, oh, Lamar said that he wants to have more meetings and all that, and said that Lamar and Zay were getting together last year, watching 7-on-7s, passing periods during training camp, and they were already trying to get on the same page with one another. So doing all of that, and sometimes you got the other guys stopping in like Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, etc. And so getting on the same page as early as possible, that's something Lamar has prioritized. And as we heard from Zay Flowers earlier, will continue to prioritize, which is just great. I mean, again, this is exactly what you want to hear from the leader of your football team. So I love it. He talked about DeAndre Hopkins and his impact. He's a quick study, he said, and he loves talking to the quarterbacks and getting on the same page. It's the stuff Lamar prioritizes. It's the stuff that DeAndre Hopkins seems to prioritize. T. Martin also talked about Cooper Rush as well. He said that it's going great, and said that, they put a lot on those guys. Didn't miss a day from football school to the OTAs, and he had questions. He's been asking those questions, and he said that he likes the presence in the room, a vet leader, and that all is true. I do like Cooper Rush bringing a veteran presence. I agree. I wish there weren't as many bad reports as we have had from Cooper Rush so far. So I hope that does get better. Then DeAndre Hopkins stepped up on the podium, and he said the rapport with, Lamar's been coming around, and talked about just in general, talking about building a rapport with the quarterback. He talked about being practice and working together, communicating. He's learned that Lamar's a competitor. He's been shooting hoops on the basketball goal. He said he didn't want to lose there. And on the football field, he said that if he makes a mistake or doesn't complete the ball that he wants to, he's hard on himself. And that's why he is who he is. He's a competitor. And he said that it feels good to be with the Ravens and being in Baltimore. He's playing with two good receivers, and he's here to help however he can, which is great. He said that what stands out to him about being a Raven is the camaraderie and how close the guys are. He said he thinks that's what makes a great football team, and I personally agree with DeAndre there. And he said, quote, they do things not just on the field, but off the field together, and I've always been a big fan of that. You have to build a bond, not just on the field, but off of the field. And that's something Lamar has also talked apparently to Zay about doing some more stuff to up that camaraderie. So, look, the messaging has been great. Like, this is all stuff that you want to hear, and to me, I think that it's different because DeAndre's played with good quarterbacks. Obviously, last season, DeAndre played with Patrick Mahomes. It's not like DeAndre's had great quarterback play throughout the course of his entire career. He's had to go through some struggles here, but getting to play with Mahomes and Lamar in back-to-back seasons is good for him. But, he said Lamar's a unique quarterback. He's a great quarterback. So, I think that DeAndre is all in here with the Ravens, and it's really good. It's really good that he has that mindset. And that, again, it's like the veteran leader aspect where Zay's still a young guy, Rashod's still a young guy. They're taking on leadership roles, but DeAndre just brings that veteran presence. He's been there. He's done that. I know we've had Kadri Ismail on the show before, and he's talked about how it reminds him of Odell when he signed with the Ravens. And, it's obviously for a lot less of a price tag, but I think he could have that impact. So it's great. He also had a lot of praise for Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, two guys he'll be working closely in tandem with this upcoming year. And Lamar then stepped to the podium, and we know his comments on Jaire, but he talked about he wants to bond with the team. He said, quote, I just feel like bonding with my guys will help us a lot more on the field, picking each other's brains, being around each other a lot more. We'll probably know what one of us is thinking ahead. And so he talked about that with Zay, with DeAndre Hopkins, Rashod Bateman, like that. All that stuff on the field comes from bonding off of it. So again, the mindset is there. The messaging is there. He talked about DeAndre Hopkins. He actually recalled a play where he threw him that shallow pass and he caught the ball smoothly, got up, and he said that that's some veteran type stuff, some super vet type stuff. He said he called DeAndre Hopkins a super vet. So look, we know Lamar requested to play with DeAndre a couple of years ago, and now he's here. And look, Lamar is happy about it. I mean, it's pretty obvious he is. So that's nice. But he also talked about, he went to bat for Mark Andrews, which is really cool. He was asked about the end of the year, how that went in Buffalo, and he said he's always hungry. Things happen. We play football. Like I said, I threw an interception, a bonehead interception, and fumbled the ball in the first half. We still had a chance to win. Things happen. It's not going to always go our way. That was probably our first real snow game at that. Not to blame it on the weather or anything like that, but it's football. everything is not going to always go right. So again, he's never going to throw his teammates under the bus, even if it's not his fault, which again, he mentioned those turnovers in the first half, which were, right? I know there was the miscommunication and the fumble. That was his fault. But, he's going to take the blame, whether it is his fault or not, which is one of the great qualities of being a leader. He also declined to comment on his contract situation and was pressed on a little bit by the media and who was there, and Lamar Jackson. Just, so it was like, hey, you asked if it was if becoming the highest paid player in the NFL sounded good, and he just said, it sounds good. And he moved on there. So I think, again, Lamar's messaging, the team's messaging, it is, hey, we want to win. We understand what we want to do. We understand that we haven't been finishing in the spots we want to be finishing. And that, to me, is really good. And he even went to bat for Mark Andrews later on in the conversation saying, quote, I just saw people try to dog him in the comments and stuff. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people that wish they could have been playing this game. He has accomplished so much for us and for himself. So I feel like just let things happen sometimes. I wish you would have won the game. I wish I didn't throw that interception. I wish I didn't fumble. And I wish that mishap had not happened, but it happened. It's just a lesson learned. So next time we'll do something better. So again, minicamp, hearing from Lamar, all this is awesome. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the year. And I think that Baltimore truly, like we talk about this every year, at least it's felt like that, but it does feel like the energy is a little different this season compared to the last couple. And look, that will happen. Every loss, every heartbreaking loss will add a layer of motivation. I've been on record here saying I'm tired of the revenge tour. Just win the thing, right? I've been on record saying that, but the body transformations, the accountability, the trying to get better, like that messaging to me, it is, and I keep saying messaging because it is so clearly there. Like this team clearly has a plan, and these players, these coaches, they have plans, and I'm really excited to see them trying to execute them this season and even in the offseason as well. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be continuing to recap minicamp day 2, as well as diving into more Ravens coverage. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.